Hey everyone, welcome to ScreenGeeks. This is Dave.
This is Barry.
And this week we're going to have some fun. Like we talked The Invisible Man last week and horror movies that we're missing, and that was a blast. Like thanks again to Tim Schultz for sitting down with us and talking for a while. But this week we get to we're kind of cherry picking the stuff we want to cover that we've missed. And I was like, "Do you want to do the Spider-Man movies?" And Barry said, "Well, if you want to talk into the Spider-Verse, sure." It's like, okay, there's a story there. So we'll just talk into the Spider-Verse. I'm sure we'll touch on the Tom Holland films and his appearances somewhat, but we're gonna have some fun talking a little Miles Morales amongst other characters.
Yeah, this is it for me. I mean, I know we're how many different Spider-Men, how many different Spider movies, but I saw this and I thought this feels like the first one for me because I did enjoy the, and we'll talk about it. We'll get more into it. I did enjoy the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, the first two. I loved the first Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man. But to me, this is it for me. Tom Holland's an adorable little actor, but I don't like him as Peter Parker. I love Miles Morales. I want more of that. I want more of this. This movie is radical and different. I guess to set it up before we show the trailer, I mean, this is there's never really been an animated film quite like this, and this is depicting the life of Miles Morales, who has loving and very attentive parents, but he has a difficult life for a number of reasons. He, in some ways, early on in the story, he's torn between his uncle and his father, the loyalty there, and also the two different worlds that he is skating, and also eventually, when he is bitten by a radioactive spider, the choices he makes to either become the hero that he is destined to be or not. This is there. You know, for a movie that is as visually rich and fun as this movie is, it's very complex.
Absolutely,
It's good stuff.
So let's roll the clip and then have some fun. We'll come back and see which universe we end up in.
Hey guys,
Who are you?
I'm Gwen Stacy. I'm from another dimension.
How many more spider people are there?
Hey, fellas.
This could literally not get any weirder. It can get weirder.
Okay.
Okay, let's get one thing straight first, Barry. There's only two Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies.
I was at Comic-Con in 2007, and he was talking about Spider-Man 3. So, I don't know. Like to talk about this, let me just address this. Like, I think there's
they address it in the movie, so.
They do. I think there's parts of that film that work. It's not the mask scene, obviously. I like the Sandman stuff. I thought that was a really cool visual premise. I really enjoyed Topher Grace's performance until he became Venom, and I thought, no, that feels like a different movie altogether. They're trying to shoehorn in there. I mean, for me, that film, it's like Batman and Robin. It's just you could kind of feel Toys R Us like going like, what do you got for us? It feels like the corporate aspect of Spider-Man just kind of took over the storytelling. Because I'm not saying Spider-Man 3 is a great movie or even a good movie, but I don't think it's a total disaster. I don't think it's like Jonah Hex or Catwoman.
Well, that's kind of a low bar, man. Let's
That's
be
kind
honest.
of a low bar, isn't it?
It is. But it's also a fair criticism. Like I love Sam Raimi movies for the most part, but yeah, that third one. I mean, there were good parts to it, but you could tell it was a movie that he was forced to make about characters he really couldn't have cared less about somewhat. We mentioned last episode, like Upgrade is the Venom movie we should have gotten. Like that inhabited the entire idea beautifully. And
thank you for bringing that up, Dave. That's actually a really good segue for me. This is an embarrassing thing to admit because you're going to hear me gush all over this Spider-Verse movie, but the trailer for Into the Spider-Verse did not grip me. I thought that's a really herky-jerky style of animation. No, thank you. And then I did suffer through Venom opening night. Fun fact about Venom, it's terrible. So after the end credits of Venom, they showed a sequence from Into the Spider-Verse, and it's the sequence where Miles and Peter B. Parker are dragged by the subway train. And it was a really terrible idea because like the scene is completely out of context. It's a frantic action sequence. And if anything, I just thought, man, this movie looks like even more of a headache than it already looked like. So I did not see this film in the theater. I'm very embarrassed to say that. It's a movie that really obviously provided an extraordinary large screen experience, but no, I completely skipped it. It wasn't, and I heard the good reviews, and I'm like, I don't care. That movie looks like such an eyesore. No, thank you. A 2-hour animated movie that looks like something I wouldn't watch on Adult Swim. But then, I borrowed it from my local library. I waited that long to see it, and I've been preaching its gospel ever since.
Yeah, Steph and I had a similar reaction. Like I saw the first trailer, I'm like, oh, I mean, this should be good, but it's not. And then the next trailer came out. This looks pretty good. And so I showed it to Steph, and she's like, same reaction. And then the third trailer came out. Dang it, I don't want to watch this. Want to watch this movie. And again, my wife had the exact same reaction. She's like, dang, we're going to have to see this in the movies now, aren't we? Like, we're going to have to go to the theater. And so that Christmas, after it came out, we were out at my in-laws' house. Steph's folks generously just offered to watch Abby so we could go have a little date time. And we went to see Into the Spider-Verse in Grand Junction. And we walked out slack-jawed, just like, hey, did we really just watch something that amazing? And is this the best Spider-Man movie hands down? Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. And that's a tough thing to kind of that's I mean, I'm more of a Tom Holland fan than you are. I mean, heck, I'm wearing the shirt from the school that he goes to. So, you know, it's got give a little bit of love there. And it was more because it was like, hey, they actually cast someone who actually looks like he would be Peter's age in high school. Sure. And so like that's how low the bar was for Spider-Man in many ways. I agree with you about Spider-Man 1 and 2. I really enjoyed those movies. I haven't revisited them lately. I kind of feel like I need to. Abby's just turning 7, so it kind of feels like that might be it might be a time to do that. I don't know. We'll see. But then, you know, and I enjoyed Andrew Garfield's turn in Amazing Spider-Man. Like the chemistry between him and Emma Stone is phenomenal. And I think it still stands up. And then I saw the trailers for the second one and I still haven't seen it. And I feel like my life is a little bit fuller and richer for that fact. Yes. And then this miracle of a movie comes out and brings about like the fun and the mirth and the wonder of Spider-Man that, you know, is kind of constrained in the MCU that you couldn't do within a movie. And it's just, it's a miracle of a movie. That's really the only way to bring it up, to talk about it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And let's see, I mean, I guess I should explain my disdain for the Tom Holland movies. I'll quickly say, to me, they feel juvenile as opposed to a movie about a young person. I feel like they feel like children's films to me. In Homecoming, I thought the angle with Vulture was arresting, and I love the way that the third act twist, the third act reveal of the door opening, I thought was wonderful. That was the one part of the film, like, oh, it's impossible to have seen that coming. That's a great twist. But otherwise, that film didn't do it for me. Far From Home really rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know if it's just Jake Gyllenhaal with a fishbowl on his head. I just not a fan at all of that film. I feel like I've had enough of the Holland verse, so to speak, the Hollandaise Spider-Man verse.
Dang,
he seems like a nice enough guy. It just does not do it for me in the role. And yes, I liked Tobey Maguire. I liked, he was obviously too old for the role. But there was something not only moody, but I thought very soulful about his work. I loved his performance in those movies. And likewise, Garfield. I thought Garfield was great. I couldn't agree with you more. I thought he had excellent chemistry with Emma Stone. I liked the subplot with her father, played by Dennis Leary. I don't know. And I've said this a number of times in the show, so forgive me if I'm a broken record as always, but I love Into the Spider-Verse so much. I'm going, please, no sequel, because this is perfect. This is everything I've ever wanted from a Spider-Man movie. You guys can just walk away. And of course, it's like they already got something planned for 2022. But anyway, but no, for me, this is it. This is the Spider-Man movie.
Let's finish the rabbit trail. I'll go down the Holland trail as well.
Please.
I thought his revelation in Civil War was great. I thought it was just an absolute blast. I love the fact that they had Marissa Tomei play Aunt May, and you've got Tony Stark hitting on her. Like, it's just such a great touch. And I really enjoyed Homecoming. A lot of it was because Michael Keaton made Vulture like the possibly the cheesiest villain in the Spider-Man Rogue Gallery, which really is saying something really interesting and was really a revelation. And I really enjoyed Homecoming a lot. And then we got Far From Home, and I own every Spider-Man except Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man 2, and Far From Home. I have zero desire to ever own that movie. It was, I don't want to say, I mean, the performances weren't even necessarily bad or anything. It's just the story was bad. I never bought into the whole Mysterio thing at all. It's like, what's the reason everyone's doing this? Oh, because Tony Stark's a dick. Yeah. Who doesn't know that? I know it felt shoehorned. I was not a fan of that movie, and it soured me so much. I was like, well, I really don't care if I see another Holland Spider-Man. Like, that's how much it soured me. In the Avengers movies, I thought he was fine. But then this came around, and I'm just like, I understand what you're saying about you don't want a sequel. However, I have a 7-year-old who just watched this for the first time and is absolutely obsessed with Spider-Gwen and just wants more Spider-Gwen. So,
Sure.
So on behalf of my daughter, I must disagree.
Well, I like the idea of a spin-off movie personally.
Yes.
Yeah.
The voice acting is fantastic in this thing.
It is. You couldn't have picked a better voice cast. I think my fear is just that it's going to be a redo of what we just had, and it's just going to be bigger, and it's going to be more alternate universes. Because I do think there's something really charming about this group, because it is a strange batch. The film noir Spider-Man and Spider-Ham and Spider-Gwen, they're kind of wonderful. And if they can find, I think the Guardians of the Galaxy movies work because it is about these offbeat individuals, how they shouldn't work together, and they do. I think it's, that kind of dynamic. If they can justify a sequel as opposed to just making a bigger sequel, because how do you make a bigger sequel than this movie? I mean, the last 30 minutes of Spider-Verse, I mean, it's like altered states. It's like, I'm not going to do it's like acid, but I mean, kind of is. It's a crazy psychedelic.
It's an acid trip for kids.
I mean, in animation, we've never had anything like this. I mean, people compare it to Adult Swim on MTV. I mean, this movie is like a Scanner Darkly. It's crazy stylish and weird. It's breathtaking because it looks so different. But the last 30 minutes of this movie, man, it's just splashes of color. It's so gorgeous and so rich and bizarre. How do you, that's the thing. It's like, to do a sequel, how do you make it bigger than this? I don't see it.
Yeah, it's a challenge to do. There are some things that would be too over the top. Like if they were to go to Spider-Ham's universe, I am absolutely here for John Mulaney doing more Spider-Ham cartoons. When we showed it to Abby the first time, it was, hey, we're watching this cartoon first. Because I don't know if you got the Blu-ray or the DVD when you checked it out from the library. Did it start with the Spider-Ham cartoon automatically?
No.
Okay, so on the Blu-ray, it forces you to watch. Well, it doesn't force you, but you can skip it. It automatically goes to the Spider-Ham cartoon about how he gets sucked into the Spider-Verse. And when it ends with that, all I wanted was a hot dog. I mean, my child cackled maniacally. And then we were off and into the ride. And it was just a great time from start to finish. It'd be very easy for this cast. I'm looking at it. I mean, it's insane having Jake Johnson, Haley Steinfeld, Mahershala Ali, Brian Tyree Henry, Lily Tomlin, Zoe Kravitz. I didn't know Zoe Kravitz did the voice for Mary Jane. That's awesome.
Great job. Mm-hmm.
And this movie found a way to let Nicolas Cage be the most Nicolas Cage that Nicolas Cage can possibly Nicolas Cage, whilst being absolutely perfectly cast and fitting into a Spider-Man movie that just makes you giggle and just endears you to him even more. Endears him to you.
I'm a giant Nicolas Cage fan. I will be the first to admit that his career choices of the last 10 years have not been good or consistent, but mostly just not good.
You're not a fan of Mandy?
Love Mandy. Love Mandy. I love Joe. Bad Lieutenant is one of my favorite movies, period.
Yes.
I find myself becoming a Nicolas Cage defender most of my time because, for every movie like Mandy, there's 5 movies he does that are, what are you doing, man? I couldn't agree more. I think he missed out on the whole comic book thing because I thought he worked really well in Kick-Ass. I'm not a fan of that movie, but I thought he was great in that. And he's great in this. There's something about him, I think, that works really well in a comic book universe. I don't know. Maybe it's not too late. Maybe the Marvel universe or the DCU can pull him into a character because I think he works really well in these kind of movies.
That's fair. I joked because I hate Mandy with a fiery passion, so that's why I brought that up.
You don't like Mandy? Oh, man.
Okay, do we need to make this an episode? All right. Wait, this might be a geek versus geek episode. Let us know. Podcast ScreenGeeks, podcast David Barry at ScreenGeeks.com. If you want to hear us do the discussion of Mandy, I guess I might be willing to watch it again.
Yes, I will sharpen my claws. I would love to do that, man.
Oh boy,
I'm a huge fan of that film. I'm surprised you didn't like that movie, but it is. I mean, it's not exactly a subtle film, now is it?
It may be a lot of things. Subtle is not one of them. Well, we have Halloween coming up, and we need some movies. So that might make the list. Okay. Yeah.
That's a good one. Good
You know,
Halloween movie.
I made you watch Ready or Not and you weren't a fan, so let's just have a little turnabout as fair play.
Okay.
One of the things that was really impressive with this film, getting back to Into the Spider-Verse, is Shamik Moore as Miles Morales. Like, there's this scene at the beginning where he's going to his new school and he walks by his old school. And it's something that was brought up, I think, on Slash Filmcast, about how he does a whole bunch of code switching, which is where, like, depending on who he's talking to, the way that he speaks changes. And he just slides in and out between groups, like, flawlessly. And it felt very human and felt very real. Like, if there's one thing this film has going for it in spades, is that Miles is a fully fleshed out character. Like, full of the insecurities on an entirely different level from Peter. Like, there's certain things that are identifiable universally. You know, when you're a teenager and you just don't fit in and you feel awkward in your body, that all, you know, absolutely tracks. But I think bringing Miles into this brought a new perspective and new challenges that were just, I just loved. Like the part where he's like, well, I can go jump off a building. And he goes up to the building. He's like, that's way too high. And goes and finds a lower building to give that a try. And just finding his own way and his own path, especially once he meets all the other spider folks, I'll say, it was just, it was an absolute delight and a treat to sit through.
I agree with you. Let me jump off of that. The moments, I mean, it's a great visual gag. The whole thing of, like, he goes to the top of the building and he's walking down. There's just no way I'm going to jump off that gigantic building. And there's also, of course, the wonderful moment. Again, it's a moment that's like, it's very self-conscious. It's the one where he gets bit by the spider and he's just like, doing, you know, like it's not like this big moment. It's just like, what the heck happened there? This movie is constantly, you know, it's very aware that it's not the first Spider-Man movie, although it might as well be. I think and I agree with you. One of the things that makes Miles so endearing, and I love this character. God, I love this character. And one of the scenes that really moved me, it happens later in the film. It's when all the Spider-Men, so to speak, are together, and they're basically testing him to see if he's up for it. And they're almost like goading him and harassing him. And Miles kind of breaks down. Yeah. And they have this, and they're, you know, and the Spider Noir and Spider Hammer kind of conversing together, saying, well, I don't think this kid is up for it. I love that moment because these movies, you know, they're predicated on these moments where these characters, you know, after the origin story is complete, you know, they stand on top of a building or a ladder or whatever it is, and they go, this is my destiny. This is what I've trained. And this movie, you know, it's about how freaking hard that is. How even if you have powers, whatever that may be, you know, there's this idea of embracing this kind of life and having that, you know, and you know, as you learn very quickly, as he learns very quickly, it's about seeing the world in a way that's, you know, you learn that you can't trust everybody you think you can trust, and that the people you love may very well be your enemy, and vice versa. And I feel like this movie it captures more of the difficulty, the problem of being a superhero more than any film. Because I know people love that aspect about Spider-Man. You are destined to be Spider-Man, but I don't want to be Spider-Man. I feel like this movie is really about the weight of it, how hard it is, how impossible it is, and what it takes to, you know, because he ultimately decides to become who he is because he becomes, you know, comfortable with understanding the world around him and how painful it is, and also that he's the only one who can do this in some way. Anyway, yeah, I think that's one of the things that's so wonderful about this movie is it's not just about embracing your destiny as a superhero. It's kind of figuring out how hard it is to be a superhero in the first place.
Absolutely. That scene that you're bringing up is a quintessential moment of humanity in that movie, because it'd be very easy for all the spider people to be like, man, this kid sucks. Let's drop him like a bad habit and move on with life. But instead they decide it's a lot more humanity, and they're just like, oh, I mean, this kid's only been doing this for 2 days. You know, right. he's still figuring this thing out. He's just not ready. And they don't think of less of him for that. It's just, well, crap, this is kind of the reality we have to deal with. And I really enjoyed the playing around with timelines. Like, it's funny, like, it wasn't until I looked up on IMDb after we walked out of the theater, it's like, wait, Chris Pine was Spider-Man in this movie? And I was like, okay, he's in Marvel and DC now, go Mr. Pine. But he was so great. And then Jake Johnson is like this older, fatter Peter, for lack of a better way to put it. And then you've got, you know, Spider-Man Noir, which they don't do a lot with Nick Cage, but what he does, what time he has, he makes the most of it. And the same with, what was it? Is Kamiko Glenn? Who did she play? Penny Parker, the anime Spider-Man. They all had such, even though they may have not have had like full moments to shine in a big way, they were all fleshed out enough that you got a very good sense of who they are, which is not an easy thing to do with something that's such a stinking ensemble movie. I mean, yeah, I mean, look at Justice League. That movie's a dumpster fire, and we've talked about that and already dumped on it. And if you're looking to the Max movie, good on you. Good luck. Hope it's everything you want. But like Haley Steinfeld, they made the most used. Yes, she's kind of a name from True Grit and whatever else, but she really gave Gwen a gravitas and this experience that's like she's been doing this longer, and has this weight of Gwen that really, I mean, that's why I wanted to have Abby watch this movie. I'm like, this is the kind of superhero I want you to see. And she's seen the cartoons, like the Marvel Rising cartoons beforehand and all that. So she had an idea who the character was, but she was so much cooler in this movie. And that's kind of how it is for a lot of the Spider characters. They're all just have their moment of just absolute and complete coolness.
Yeah, I love that you were able to show your daughter this and that she had that resonance. It's in a very different way, but maybe not too dissimilar. I watched with Julia the other night. She had not seen it. She had no interest in seeing it. She was very much like me, like, I'm not watching that. I'm like, no. Trust me, Julia. I was saying the same thing a year ago. You're going to have a very different take on it. Not only did Julia love the movie, she said, wow, to see a young, smart woman in that role, it's just amazing. She's like, this isn't not to compare with other movies, but this isn't a situation where an actress is just wearing leather and she's just doing the poses and, she's just kind of going through, a very masculine journey. It's like, no, this is a really well etched character who's really interesting. There is pain in her life, like there's pain in all of their lives, but it's not, it doesn't feel like the movie is going through the comic book checklist. It does feel like a movie about people. And to extend to talk about Kingpin, Kingpin is vile and horrifying, but he's also a guy who lost his family, and he's taken advantage of the super colliders, which terrifies me, by the way. Super colliders scare the hell out of me. Whenever I read about
it's why we're in this timeline, Barry. It's why we're in this timeline right now.
Boy, wouldn't that? And you know what? Of all the conspiracy theories I've been hearing for the last couple months, that is the one that makes sense. So yeah, no, I don't think you're kidding, Dave. But anyway, yeah, so they scare the heck out of me. But I love that Kingpin's thing is like, hey, like, I may destroy everything, but I'm going to get the only thing that ever made me human, the only thing I ever loved, the only thing that makes sense to me. I thought, like, this character will remain, kind of a, he's more of a visual idea than he is a well-etched character, but that aspect of him is like, oh, there's something so tragic about this guy too.
Yeah, there's a tragicness that did you watch the Netflix Daredevil series at all?
I did, yes.
Like, Vincent D'Onofrio is really good, but I don't know that they fleshed the character out as much. Like, it's very clear that's what they were going for, to flesh him out and give him like this complex storyline. They didn't do it the same way that they did with Liev Schreiber in this movie. Like, that was, again, I mean, it's a tough thing to pull off in a 2-hour movie as opposed to a show with 3 seasons.
Yeah.
And it's just like my admiration for this movie. Like, I've seen it several times. Like, I own it. I bought the 4K Blu-ray the day it came out, even though I don't have a 4K TV yet. Once I do, that's the first movie I'm popping in because holy crap, I can't wait to watch this movie in HDR one day. But it's very, like, the heartbreak of spoilers. The movie's over a year old. Is it only a year old?
It's almost a year old. Didn't it come out? Was it last Christmas?
Let me look.
Or was it 2 years ago?
2018. Oh, good. Okay, so it's at least been almost 2 years.
2 years old. I can't believe it's been that long.
Oh, good. Again, like the before times, like, it messes with me every time. I'm like, hey, I saw this movie like 3 years ago. Yeah, dude, it came out in January. Like, it just deflates me. What's interesting is that the next movie I want to show Abby, like, I've got this list of movies that Abby can watch as she gets older, and one of the 7-year-old movies is Bumblebee with Haley Steinfeld again. So I've shown her the trailer, and she's like, "Ooh, yeah, I want to see that movie." And I was like, you know what? I just realized the lady who does the voice for Gwen in this is in Bumblebee, and her eyes just got so big, and she's so excited because that's the Transformers movie we should have had from the beginning. I don't know that we really need to jump into that for a full episode, but Man, that's a good movie. And
It's the only one. I agree with you, Dave. It's the only one we need, and they could just stop. That's fine.
or start
Because
off from there. As long as we don't get
they're gonna
Bumblebee
do,
humping
like,
Megan
Optimus
Fox's
Prime.
leg
They're
again.
just going to go through each Transformer. I think that's my fear. Is like next one's going to be Optimus, and it's just going to be the same crap all over again.
Now, granted, we do have the Netflix series, The War for Cybertron, which if it's based off the game, I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but if it's based off the game was fantastic. Had a great storyline. Wow, we just rabbit trailed hard. Sorry, that was my B.
That's my fault too. Let me ask you though, because I think this is an important question because I think that the animation style of this film, at times it is frantic and frenetic. At times it's a bit much, but I adjusted to it. It only took me about 10 minutes. And I know that maybe some people go, like, I don't know about 10 minutes. I mean, the opening scenes, I mean, it goes by so fast. It's, it's almost like strobe lighting. But the story does calm down, and it becomes about learning about who Miles Morales is, his world, his family, his friends. And at that point, I mean, the running time just flew by. But I'll be honest, like there were, I had hesitation certainly at the start. I mean, the whole thing of the alternate universe glitching, I mean, it extends to the opening, studio logo, which is a wonderful touch, but it would definitely, it still set off the alarm bells with me. Like, am I going to like this? This is really a bit much. I would compare this to something like Scott Pilgrim, where I think that at times it's abrasive. It's meant to not only reflect anime and modern animation, but also video games, obviously, for better or worse. But yeah, like even though I'd love to hear what you think of it, because I think it works. And again, it took me a while to adjust to it, but it may be a bit much for some because I guess the word is aggressive. It's a very aggressive style of animation.
I took it to be kind of a harkening back to like the comic books more than video games or anything else, honestly, because every character is rendered in a little bit of a different way. So like Penny Parker is rendered very anime-like, which has an entirely different anime style than any of the other characters do. And same thing with Spider-Man Noir. And I don't know if you've noticed it. I mean, if you noticed it or not, a lot of the animation looks like it has like the dots that they would use for like printing comic books back in the 80s.
Yes.
And that was such a good touch. I was just like, oh, this is supposed to feel like I'm watching a comic book. And then having the various animation styles really, I adjusted to it pretty darn quick. I think doing the whole thing over the opening logo is kind of something that kind of gets you mentally prepared for what you're about to see. And so I don't think the film, it was definitely aggressive in some spots. Like when you have the thing of like bagel, like that was a great touch. Like it's very clearly supposed to be a comic book movie, and it lets you get lost in that in the way that I get lost in comics all the time. I mean, the comic I'm doing this week is Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends #1, first appearance of Firestar. Like just like that's what it feels like to me. Like it's let's not get it twisted. This is so much better than those 80s cartoons that we had to grow up with. Like those movies, those cartoons, I tried watching some of them with Steph, and it's painful, and I just went to the wrong logo, and oh well, Dave's still getting used to the switching thing. It's all good. This is what happens when I'm looking at the camera and not what I'm doing. But like, I don't know, did you watch those cartoons growing up?
I just showed them to Beatrice a little while ago because Beatrice loves Spider-Man. I have a book. It's really a book I use for classes and research, but it's basically like this big coffee table book on the history of Marvel. It was printed in 1989, so it's old. It has a foreword by Stan Lee. It's super cool. But as you go through the book, it basically has a list of all the Marvel characters. This is a very long chapter on Spider-Man. And Beatrice loves the look of Spider-Man. She loves Spider-Man. So she has a few Spider-Man action figures. I've not shown her any movies yet. She's 4. But I did show her the Spider-Man cartoon. And because it's showing him fly around, yes, the animation is, to put it nicely, crude and old school. And, definitely has that Hanna-Barbera laziness to it. I'm sorry, but it does. Or maybe Filmation is a better comparison. But anyway, I've shown Beatrice a number of those ones, and she enjoys them not for the plot or the brilliant vocal acting, but because of
Spider-Man.
Just spinning around, just doing his web thing. Yeah, that's just to see this character in motion is exciting for her. So when she gets older, I think Spider-Verse likewise would be the first one I show her.
Yeah, so Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends is like cringy bad on so many levels. Even though I grew up loving that cartoon, like Bobby Drake, Iceman, he was the bomb. But like the 67 cartoons have a charm to them, and I would have no problem showing those to Abby. But this
So
is
that's the one with the theme song. That's the one I'm showing.
Yes,
Spider-Man.
yeah. Don't
Yeah.
yeah. This one that's over my shoulder here, like I have great fondness for it. I went back to watch it, and it was a painful experience. So just like friends don't let friends do that. I'm just saying.
Is it worse than the live action series they used to be on?
I don't
Remember
know
that?
oh, I do. Oh yeah, I remember many a weekend spent like at my grandparents' house while the grown-ups were talking in another room. I'm in the TV room watching these Spider-Man shows because that's all we had, kids. Like we didn't have this goodness. We didn't even have the '90s X-Men cartoon till we were in high school. I mean, that '70s show. If you can seek it out, I don't know. Should you?
Maybe for the completist, but otherwise, no.
Yeah,
No,
this is
not
like
at
the same time. Like, I mean, it's Spider-Man. I would put on the same level as the Captain America live-action movie from the '90s.
And you're exactly right, Dave. I mean, this is at the point where a Marvel movie meant the live action Captain America by Albert Puyen or Howard the Duck. I mean, that's what a Marvel movie used to be. So it took us a while to kind of climb out of that pit.
Dolph Lundgren would like to have words with you, sir.
Well,
No.
he was my first Frank Castle too. So
Yeah. It's yeah. I'm just
by the way, of those movies, that's the best one. The Punisher.
and it's still not good at all.
No, but if I had to watch any of those like anything made before Blade, any Marvel movie before Blade, I would go with the Dolph Lundgren.
Well, it had Louis Gossett Jr. in it at least.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, still, once again, I don't know that friends let friends do that. That was a dark time. So like seeing something with the quality and the attention to character and actually caring about these creations was just so beautiful when I saw this film. And every time I've watched it, like my admiration grows, and I've got a big goofy stupid grin on my face every time I watch it.
You know, it's a different comic book company, but I do remember like when Tim Burton's Batman came out and then the Batman the animated series came out. That's how I feel watching Spider-Verse. It's like the creators of this love this character, and I'm not just watching a cartoon, I'm watching art. This is beautiful. That series, I don't know if it's a really great comparison, obviously DC Marvel, but like that series was film noir for kids and done in a way that was really like, yeah, I mean, anybody who listens to this show knows how brilliant the Batman animated series is. But that's how I felt watching Spider-Verse. I just thought, it's not just about making a great Spider-Man movie, which it is, but it's also about the possibilities of animation. I just feel like they kind of broke past the glass ceiling and showed us things that you're not supposed to see in a mainstream American movie. This is a bold film. Not only because the story is great, but the animation is doing stuff that I don't know we've seen outside of a 60s experimental film.
And actually, I would argue that Batman the Animated Series is a perfect correlation to this, because we're actually going through that right now during the evenings with Abby. We're into the second season, so we're like 60 or 70 episodes into this series.
So good. Freaking good.
Yeah, and the fact that it was a cartoon that was based off of, production-wise, like it was based off of black backgrounds, which they would then paint and animate over. That was a groundbreaking thing that no one had done, and no one's really tried a lot ever since. And so, like, you do have like that technical breakthrough, but you also have caring about the stories. Like Harley Quinn is popular for a reason because of the development that she went through on that cartoon. Like now, Abby loves Harley because she's goofy in the new DC Superheroes Girls cartoon, and she is. And Tara Strong does a great job with her. But Arlene Sorkin was so good bringing that character to life and bringing her gravitas that, like, we just watched an episode a couple nights ago. It was Harley's Holiday, where Harley gets out of Arkham. She's got a clean bill of health. She has her first chance, and everything just goes wrong for her. And it's just, man, this is the wrong day for Harley to have the worst day of her life. And there's like this compassion from Batman behind it, saying like, look, don't do this. Like, don't take this out on the world because you've worked hard. You've earned this opportunity. I don't want to see you flush it. And she has a hard time, accepting that. And it just has like this beautiful throughput of like people can change. There is room for redemption, which is not the kind of thing that we saw in superhero cartoons growing up. Like it just didn't happen. So there, for you bringing that comparison, I think is very appropriate.
Thank you. I mean, you said it, David. Like it's the stakes are high emotionally for these characters in that series, and certainly in Spider-Verse. And that's, if superhero movies and I speak broadly, and I love this genre. I really honestly do, even though I pick on a lot of them because I think some of them overreach, or they're just all about special effects, or all about selling action figures. But if these movies are just about who's punching who in the face, who's about to fight who, and it's all about this big showdown and this, big pile of light coming out of the clouds or whatever it is, it just doesn't interest me, because I feel like they've already, I feel like the first couple of Iron Man movie already did that as well as it could possibly be done. And I feel like there's just too much emphasis about like, well, this guy in the suit's going to punch this guy in the suit. And it's like, who are these people? And I feel like with Spider-Verse, and certainly with Batman the Animated Series, it's like this, I'm watching this not only because it's great and it's art, I like these characters. I'm interested in these characters. And clearly the people behind it are interested too. And that's, certainly growing up with cartoons. How many times can you say that? It's like, man, like, certainly with when I don't know how it was for you. Batman for me was an afternoon series. I watched it after school, so it wasn't like a Saturday morning thing. Most Saturday morning shows, it's like, clearly it looked like they were on a deadline. And these are shows I love. Other than maybe Beetlejuice, the animated series, I never saw like art done at that level, for kids. And I think, Spider-Verse is similar, because I think, again, one of the reasons I probably bypassed it, because I thought this looks like some jittery, obnoxious, hanky, animated movie that's going to be really entertaining for a kid who's just like had too much Red Bull. But no, as a grown up, I saw it the other night for the second time. I can't wait to see it again. It's a masterpiece.
Yeah. We have the burden of knowledge. Like, we have that PTSD from the bad versions that came before.
Yes. Yes, and by the way, we haven't talked about it. You haven't seen it. The Amazing Spider-Man 2, just don't do it.
Okay, I won't.
I saw it on an IMAX. It should have been like this great experience, because I really did like the first Amazing Spider-Man, but the second one, it's not Jamie Foxx's fault. It's not Paul Giamatti's fault, completely. But it's awful. I'm Miles Morales all the way, man. I think Peter Parker needs to go into hibernation for a while. I'm all about Miles Morales.
We need to talk Lily Tomlin real quick, though.
Yes,
it's great to have Marissa Tomei as Aunt May. I thought that was inspired casting, and I think she does great with that role and just has a lot of fun with it. But having Lily Tomlin go old school Aunt May, but be the rockin' granny who's like, oh, you got a goober, here, let's go to the secret lair. Like, she's in on the gag the whole way. Like, oh, she was just so fun in this movie.
She was terrific. Let's talk about the women in this movie. Doc Ock as Doc Ock has been reconfigured. Oh my gosh, fantastic! Great choice of performer. Great reintroduction to that character. Yeah, the women in this movie, it's like, this doesn't feel like women who are standing around waiting to be rescued, or women, wearing leather so they can look good posing next to the boys. Like, these are good, and I'm not saying that all comic book movies are sexist or chauvinistic or have like these limitations. Not necessarily, but a lot of them do. And this movie, it's like, man, the women are killing it. The female characters are every bit as rich and interesting and layered as the men are. And even the fact that they cast a legend like Lily Tomlin in a role that, could always, in most Spider-Man movies, that role does feel like a throwaway, or she just has to have like the heart to heart with Peter. No, she's wonderful. She's a shot of life in this movie. She's not just used to give exposition. She's an important character, and they couldn't have picked a better actress.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not excusing anything that may have happened in past years or decades or whatever. The reality was that boys were the ones who did most of this comic book superhero crap. Yeah. And so it'd be very easy for these characters to be token inclusions for, there's like 3% girls. No, like it's like half comic book readers are women now. And that's why we're seeing the shift that we are in the industry. And we've got, I'm so thankful for it, because we've got fantastic writers like Gail Simone, who's done Deadpool. Clean Room is a shocking horror comic that's phenomenal. She got her start calling out. She's the one who came up with the idea of fridging a character. When Kyle Rayner was Green Lantern, and his girlfriend was there literally to get murdered by a bad guy and stuffed into a fridge. And it was like calling out. It's like, look, guys, there's more of us out here. Can we actually get something else? And so we have like visionaries like her. Okay, there's a documentary I'm going to throw out there. It's called She Makes Comics. I don't even know where it's available. I bought it when it came out, when I had a chance. We showed it at the Denver Comic-Con a few years back, and we were so blessed. We had Trina Robbins, who came out and did she did a Q&A beforehand, and and I got to sit down and talk with her afterwards. And it's like seeing these women who are like these luminaries and have gone back, 50 years or so into the history of comics. It's a fantastic look at the history of women in that genre, and how integral they've been to the formation of this art form that so many people find so compelling. But to get back to what you're talking about, these characters in this movie, like whether it's Penny or Gwen or Doc Ock, they're all kicking as much butt, if not more, than the guys. And It's not like you were talking about, like not like the leather jacket Buffy, I'm going to be a badass. There's an actual character there, and that's what makes the film so compelling for me. Like, it's just, and I don't care if it's a man or a woman or whoever, or a ham, whatever, if it's not compelling, it doesn't matter. And from top to bottom, this movie really delivers.
Thank you for bringing up Trina Robbins. She's a big deal on my end too. She's been a guest at Maui Comic-Con multiple times. We love her over here. And yeah, that documentary, I agree. If you could find it, I think it's on iTunes, I think. I don't know where it's at, but I've seen it too, and I loved it. Yeah.
No, I bought it, so I have the download of it, and I was just like, this movie's amazing.
It's fantastic. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. I know people thought that the Captain Marvel movie is a big deal. It's a big deal in the sense that it was made. It was a big deal, because you have a female protagonist taking over a role that was traditionally male in the comics. But I felt the shift more with this movie, and I hope there's more examples of this where just, every couple of years, a woman will do an action movie, and they'll be like, not to get completely about this, but I remember they're talking like, wow, man, like Charlize Theron and Mad Max, this is like a breakthrough. It's like, no, I mean, whether
she's great in it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, and she's amazing in that. But at the same, but people like people forget about Gina Davis in Long Kiss Goodnight, Sigourney Weaver in the Alien movies, for Pete's sake, or if you want to go back to the silent eras, the Perils of Pauline. But the fact is, there's just so many other examples. There's too many examples where the women are there for set dressing. They're there for exposition. They're there to fall in love. They're there to get kidnapped by the bad guy and be rescued at the end of the movie. Or, in the kind of the absurd way Pepper Potts is used. I don't know. I thought at first that seemed like a good idea. I don't even know if Gwyneth Paltrow knows what she's doing in those movies at the end. It is refreshing to see like, man, they really gave these characters some thought, not just because they need to, but because, it's just a bigger opportunity. The fact that Noir Spider-Man in this movie is like a really soulful and interesting character, in addition to being funny, in what could have just been a side gag. The character may have had no purpose, but like every character in this movie feels like it's there for a reason. Maybe not literally every single character, but all the principal characters. I didn't feel like anybody was just there because the action figure is going to look cool. It felt like this is a really great ensemble of characters, and they all need each other, and they're all serving the story. We haven't spoken that much about Miles' father and his uncle. God, I love those characters. There's such a richness there. Your heart aches when the third act reveal comes. I love the way those characters are. Again, they're not just there to like give exposition or just to like, give Miles something to do when he's not in action sequences. Like, these are beautiful characters, and I loved how they become a very important part of the story.
Yeah, that's a really important thing to me. Like, it'd be very easy to just kind of essentially like copy paste Peter's origin and be like, except it's a black family now. No, this is an entirely different situation that still deals with the theme of loss, that is made very clear happens across all of the Spider characters. Like, if there's one thing that they can bond over and understand together, it is that feeling of loss. And there's just so much to love about this movie. Like, if you haven't watched it, first of all, what's wrong with you? Like, go watch it now, please. Like, stop this, fire it up. I think it's on Netflix. Go watch it. You're not going to regret it.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. It's every once in a while I just love Netflix, because sometimes like, oh, fantastic, that's exactly what I want to watch at that moment. Yeah, so it's easy to get access to, and it gets better with every screening. It's a perfect movie. I should have some critical things to say about it. I don't. I think this movie is firing on all cylinders. I love this film.
Absolutely. And I looked it up real quick while Barry was talking. When I cut to him, I was like, ooh, I can jump over the keyboard. She Makes Comics is available on Prime for $3 to rent it or $10 to own, or it's free to watch on Tubi TV. So if you can deal with the commercial breaks, It is a phenomenal doc. Like that thing has flown under the radar, and everyone should be watching it if you're into comics at all or into that history. It's eye-opening and loving, and while having things to say about how women are treated in the comics industry, it's more about the contributions that have been made. Like, yeah, my adoration for Trina Robbins knows no bounds. Like that, getting to spend 10 minutes talking with her on a stage was just like an absolute highlight of all my time. Like whenever you do something fun, whether you're doing Maui Comic Con or I'm doing Denver Comic Con, there's those little flashbulb moments that are like, this is why I do this. And that was one of those moments for sure.
That's fantastic. Now, what she brought to comic books is paramount, and her story is every bit as important as Stan Lee's story. It's a very important part of comic book history. And
it's worth noting, this is this the last Stan Lee cameo?
I think you're right about that. And they do, and the movie does sign off with a Stan Lee quote and special thanks to Ditko and Lee. So yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, that was
beautiful. That way. I think that's right.
Yeah, it was a beautiful moment. Like it's just like knowing that that's what had happened. Like it made me kind of tear up and well up a little bit because it's just like this is the perfect note for him to go out on.
I teared up a few times watching this movie, which is not embarrassing to admit because it's such a terrific film. But honestly, like. We've been talking about some of the tropes of this thing. Like it's not the first Spider-Man movie to deal with, the protagonist going through loss or characters that have pathos. I think Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2 has it. But man, like I felt this movie in a way I have not felt any of the other Spider-Man films. There's just, it's a lot to ask that this movie be the visual marvel that it is, but then also engage us on a human level. But I found that my heart was always engaged in this movie, even as the movie was dazzling me with some of the most just breathtaking animation I've seen in years.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I hate to dump over a movie we just showed love to, but like watching this in contrast to Bill and Ted 3, I still really like Bill and Ted 3. I think I even mentioned this during the review. I was like, if this had come out not during COVID, I probably wouldn't have been as kind to it. But it was just that shot of adrenaline of hope and love that I needed. This is kind of a more fully fleshed out and fully formed version of that. That bit of just kind of like healing hope that you need in this time right now. So
I completely agree. I love, like you, buddy. I love Bill and Ted 3 too, as well. But no, this is a whole other thing.
yes, it is absolutely. So let's cap it there. And it feels like it's perfect to talk about how like this has been so happy and uplifting. Let's go ahead and talk the Halloween new movie next week.
Let's do it.
The David Gordon Green movie.
Halloween remake. Yes.
Because you mentioned it while off camera, or no, you mentioned it during the episode when we were talking with Tim last week, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I need to talk about this movie because I have thoughts, and I think they're positive. This won't be a Mandy situation. We're gonna end up doing Mandy. We're gonna end up doing Mandy. Like I'm okay. We need people to say, hey, I want to hear you guys talk about it because I know I'm in the vocal minority. No, the silent minority. No one disliked that movie, but dude. If enough people want us to do it, I will watch it again. I will bite that particular bullet. But if you want to reach out to us, by all means do. Podcast Derry. We're not Letterkenny. Barry or Dave at ScreenGeeks.com. That could be a fun episode. Have you watched Letterkenny?
No. What is that?
We'll talk about it off air.
Okay.
Yeah. But podcast Barry or Dave all at ScreenGeeks.com. If you want to check out old episodes, you can go to ScreenGeeks.com. I'm hoping to have the podcast feed up soon, folks. It's been a heck of a time at the day job, which has been sucking up most of my time and energy. You can check out past video episodes at Facebook.com/ScreenGeeks, Twitch.tv/ScreenGeeks whenever I get around to doing game streaming. You can check out old YouTube videos on ScreenGeeks.youtube.com, and Discord's coming. That's all I can say right now. I'm actually reading a book by the wonderful former guest of this show, T. Morris, who literally wrote the book about Discord. So I want to get that implemented properly before we get it kicked off. Let me think. Our music is provided, as always, by Five Iron Frenzy. I think when this goes live, their Kickstarter will still be going. If it is, they've got a new album coming out. It is interesting. I've heard 2 of the songs off it, and wow. That's all I can say is wow. So, we'll have some fun there. If you want to leave us a voicemail, you can give us a call at 970-315-2048. But until next week, when we start digging into that horror time that is Halloween, October time, this is Dave.
This is Barry.
Take it easy.